This is Mental Forge, where weakness burns and warriors are built. Picture this moment. A young Thomas Edison stands in his laboratory, surrounded by the debris of his 999th failed attempt at creating a practical incandescent light bulb. The air smells of burned filaments and shattered glass. His financial backers are growing impatient. Critics mock his obsession with an impossible dream. Any rational person would feel the crushing weight of fear, the paralyzing whisper that maybe, just maybe, they are not meant for greatness. But Edison does something extraordinary. He acts as if fear cannot touch him. He picks up another filament, adjusts his design, and begins attempt number 1000. This is not delusion. This is not reckless optimism. This is the most powerful psychological trick ever discovered. And today, you are going to master it completely. What you are about to learn will fundamentally rewire how your mind processes fear, failure, and uncertainty. By the time we finish this journey together, you will have built an internal operating system that treats fear as nothing more than background noise, irrelevant to your decisions and powerless against your progress. You will discover the exact neurological mechanisms that allow some people to move through the world with unshakable confidence, while others remain paralyzed by doubt. More importantly, you will have the practical tools to embody this fearless state so completely that it becomes your default way of being. The human brain, magnificent as it is, comes with a factory setting designed for survival in a world that no longer exists. Your amygdala, that ancient alarm system nestled deep in your limbic brain, evolved to keep our ancestors alive when a rustling bush might contain a predator. It served us well for hundreds of thousands of years. But in our modern world, this same system treats a business presentation, a difficult conversation, or a financial risk with the same urgency it once reserved for saber-toothed tigers. Your nervous system cannot distinguish between actual physical danger and the psychological challenges that forge greatness. This is where the magic happens. When you act as if fear cannot touch you, you are not pretending fear does not exist. You are training your nervous system to recognize that most of what triggers your fear response is not actually dangerous. You are teaching your brain that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of it. You are reprogramming decades of conditioning that has convinced you to play small, stay safe, and settle for mediocrity. The neuroscience behind this transformation is both elegant and powerful. Every time you act in spite of fear, you are literally rewiring your neural pathways through a process called neuroplasticity. Your brain creates new connections and strengthens existing ones that associate bold action with positive outcomes rather than danger. The more you practice acting fearlessly, the more automatic this response becomes. What once required tremendous willpower eventually becomes your natural state of being. Consider the extraordinary life of Henry Ford. When he announced his vision to put every American family behind the wheel of an affordable automobile, the entire established order laughed at him. Carriage makers called him a fool. Investors dismissed his dreams as impossible. Even his own father urged him to return to farming and abandon his mechanical obsessions. The rational response would have been to feel intimidated, to question his vision, to seek approval from those who claimed to know better. Instead, Ford acted as if their doubts could not penetrate his certainty. He moved forward with the absolute conviction that his vision was not only possible, but inevitable. He built the first Model T, then the assembly line that would revolutionize manufacturing forever. His ability to act as if fear and doubt were irrelevant to his mission literally changed the course of human history. The key insight here is that Ford did not wait until he felt fearless to act fearlessly. He understood that confidence is not a prerequisite for bold action, but rather a byproduct of it. Every time you choose to act in alignment with your vision, despite the fear in your chest, despite the doubt in your mind, despite the criticism from others, you are building what I call fear immunity. You are proving to yourself that you are capable of far more than your comfort zone ever suggested. This principle appears in the most ancient wisdom traditions and the most cutting-edge psychological research. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his personal journal that would become known as Meditations, captured this truth with stunning clarity. He understood that external circumstances, including the opinions and reactions of others, hold only the power over us that we choose to give them. The Stoic emperor trained himself to act from a place of internal strength rather than external validation. He made decisions based on his principles rather than his fears. When barbarian tribes threatened the Roman Empire, he did not govern from a place of panic or reactive decision-making. He acted as if the outcome was already determined by his commitment to virtue and right action. If you have been following Mental Forge Academy for any time, you know that we dive deep into the practical mechanics of transformation. So let me ask you to take a moment right now to hit that subscribe button. The insights we share here are designed to compound over time, to build upon each other, to create lasting change in how you approach every aspect of your life. When you subscribe, you are making a commitment to your own growth, joining a community of people who refuse to settle for less than their full potential. This is your invitation to become part of something larger than yourself. The ancient principle of acting as if fear cannot touch you appears in Napoleon Hill's groundbreaking research into the habits of the most successful people of his era. Hill spent over 20 years studying titans like Andrew Carnegie, Charles M. Schwab, and John D. Rockefeller. What he discovered was that these individuals had developed what he called an immunity to the fear of failure. They understood that failure is not the opposite of success, but rather its most essential ingredient. They trained themselves to view setbacks as data rather than verdicts, as stepping stones rather than roadblocks. Carnegie himself embodied this principle during the economic panic of 1873. While other steel manufacturers were paralyzed by uncertainty, cutting production and laying off workers, Carnegie acted as if the downturn was an opportunity rather than a threat. He invested heavily in new technology, expanded his operations, and acquired struggling competitors at bargain prices. By the time the economy recovered, he had positioned himself to dominate the industry for decades to come. His ability to act contrary to the fear gripping his entire industry transformed him from a successful entrepreneur into one of the wealthiest men in human history. The practical application of this principle begins with understanding the physiology of fear. When your amygdala detects a perceived threat, it triggers a cascade of biochemical changes. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes shallow. Stress, hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood your system. Your thinking becomes narrow and reactive, rather than broad and strategic. This is the fight or flight response, and while it can save your life in genuinely dangerous situations, it sabotages your ability to think clearly and act boldly in the psychological challenges that determine your success. The beautiful truth is that you can interrupt this pattern at any point in the sequence. The moment you notice the physiological signs of fear, you can choose to breathe deeply, relax your shoulders, and remind yourself that you are safe. You can ask yourself a simple question that cuts through the emotional noise. What would I do right now if I knew I could not fail? Then you act on that answer. You do not wait for the fear to subside. You do not wait for permission from others. You do not wait for perfect conditions. You act as if the outcome is already assured by your commitment to the process. This is not positive thinking or wishful manifestation. This is strategic psychology based on how your nervous system actually functions. When you consistently act in spite of fear, you are training your brain to associate bold action with safety rather than danger. You are proving to yourself that you can handle whatever challenges arise from taking risks. You are building what psychologists call self-efficacy, the deep belief in your own ability to handle whatever life presents. The great inventor Nikola Tesla exemplified this fearless approach throughout his revolutionary career. When he arrived in America with little more than the clothes on his back and a letter of recommendation to Thomas Edison, he could have been overwhelmed by the magnitude of his situation. Instead, he acted as if his eventual success was inevitable. He worked with absolute dedication, generated breakthrough after breakthrough, and ultimately held over 300 patents that laid the foundation for our modern electrical world. When Edison refused to pay him the promised bonus for improving his direct current generators, Tesla did not retreat in bitterness or self-doubt. He started his own company, developed alternating current technology, and eventually won the war of currents that determined how electricity would be delivered to the world. Tesla understood that genius is not about having fewer fears than others, but about refusing to let those fears dictate your choices. He acted as if the magnitude of his vision was more important than the magnitude of his obstacles. This mental framework allowed him to persist through years of financial struggle, public ridicule, and technical setbacks that would have broken a lesser spirit. The daily practice of fear immunity begins with small acts of courage that gradually expand your comfort zone. Each morning, identify one action you have been avoiding because of fear, doubt, or uncertainty. It might be making a difficult phone call, starting a creative project, or having an honest conversation. Then act as if fear cannot touch you. Take the action immediately, before your analytical mind has time to generate 1,000 reasons why you should wait for better conditions. This practice works because it leverages what researchers call implementation intentions. When you make a specific plan for how you will respond to fear when it arises, you are much more likely to follow through than if you rely on willpower alone. You are creating what James Clear calls an obvious cue for the behavior you want to develop. The cue is the feeling of fear or resistance. The response is immediate, bold action. The reward is the growing confidence that comes from proving to yourself that you can do difficult things. Your subconscious mind, that powerful processor that runs most of your daily life below the level of conscious awareness, learns through repetition and emotion. Every time you act courageously, you are sending a clear message to your subconscious that you are the kind of person who moves toward challenges rather than away from them. You are programming yourself to default to expansion rather than contraction, to possibility rather than limitation, to faith rather than fear. The spiritual dimension of this practice is equally important. When you act as if fear cannot touch you, you are aligning yourself with what Deepak Chopra calls the field of pure potentiality. You are tapping into the creative force that brought entire galaxies into existence, the same force that grows an oak tree from an acorn and transforms a caterpillar into a butterfly. You are remembering that you are not separate from this creative intelligence, but rather an expression of it. Fear is the illusion of separation from this infinite power. Courage is the recognition that this power flows through you. The ancient Chinese general Sun Tzu understood that victory, in any conflict, is determined primarily in the mind before it ever manifests in the external world. In The Art of War, he writes about the importance of cultivating what he calls strategic confidence, the ability to assess situations clearly and act decisively, regardless of external pressures. A general who acts from fear makes defensive moves that ultimately ensure defeat. A general who acts from confidence creates the conditions for victory through bold, unexpected strategies. This same principle applies to the battlefield of your daily life. When you approach challenges from a mindset of scarcity and fear, you make small moves designed to avoid failure, rather than bold moves designed to create success. You negotiate from weakness rather than strength. You settle for less than you deserve because you are afraid to risk what you already have. But when you act as if fear cannot touch you, you negotiate from abundance. You make decisions based on your vision rather than your limitations. You create value rather than merely protecting what you already possess. The great military leader Napoleon Bonaparte demonstrated this fearless mindset throughout his rise, from obscure Corsican artillery officer to Emperor of France. At the Battle of Austerlitz, facing the combined armies of Austria and Russia, Napoleon was outnumbered nearly 2-1. Any reasonable military commander would have sought to avoid battle or at least adopt defensive positions. Instead, Napoleon acted as if defeat was impossible. He deliberately weakened his right flank, tempting the enemy to attack there, while secretly concentrating his forces for a devastating counterattack in the center. His willingness to take enormous risks, guided by absolute confidence in his strategic vision, resulted in one of the most complete victories in military history. Napoleon understood that fortune favors the bold, not because the universe rewards recklessness, but because bold action creates opportunities that cautious action never reveals. When you act as if fear cannot touch you, you position yourself to recognize and seize possibilities that remain invisible to those operating from a mindset of limitation and doubt. The wealthy understand this principle intuitively. They do not wait for guarantees before making investments. They do not wait for permission before starting businesses. They do not wait for perfect conditions before taking action. They act as if their success is inevitable, and then make it so through persistent, intelligent effort. They understand that the biggest risk is not taking any risks at all, that playing it safe is actually the most dangerous game you can play in a rapidly changing world. Robert Kiyosaki captures this in his observation that the poor and middle class work for money, while the rich make money work for them. The shift from working for money to having money work for you requires acting as if you belong in the world of investors and entrepreneurs rather than employees and consumers. It requires making financial decisions based on abundance rather than scarcity. It requires viewing market volatility as opportunity rather than threat. The practical application begins with small financial acts of courage. Instead of keeping all your money in low-yield savings accounts because you are afraid of market fluctuations, you begin investing systematically in diversified index funds. Instead of avoiding debt entirely because you are afraid of leverage, you learn to use good debt to acquire appreciating assets. Instead of earning only from your time, you begin building systems and assets that generate income whether you are actively working or not. Each of these behaviors requires acting as if you belong in the world of investors and wealth builders rather than consumers and wage earners. Each requires moving beyond the emotional patterns that keep most people financially mediocre. Each requires faith in your ability to learn, adapt, and create value in an uncertain economic environment. The great inventor and industrialist Cornelius Vanderbilt exemplified this fearless approach to wealth building throughout his transformation. From a poor Staten Island ferry operator to one of America's richest men. When the railroad industry was still in its infancy, Vanderbilt recognized that transportation would be the key to America's economic expansion. Instead of being intimidated by the established steamboat operators who dominated water transport, he systematically entered their markets, offered better service at lower prices, and gradually built the largest transportation empire of his era. Vanderbilt understood that wealth flows to those who create the most value for the most people, not to those who play it safe and avoid competition. His willingness to take calculated risks, to invest heavily in new technologies, and to compete aggressively against established players created opportunities that would never have existed if he had remained content with his modest ferry business. He acted as if his success was limited only by his vision and effort, not by his current circumstances or social background. This same principle applies to building wealth in our current economy. Instead of limiting yourself to traditional employment and saving accounts, you can act as if multiple streams of income and investment growth are your natural birthright. You can learn skills that create value in the marketplace. You can start businesses that solve real problems for real people. You can invest in assets that appreciate faster than inflation erodes purchasing power. The weekly wealth-building practice involves taking one specific action that moves you from consumer mindset to investor mindset. This might mean opening an investment account and making your first stock purchase. It might mean researching real estate markets and visiting your first potential rental property. It might mean starting a side business and making your first sale to a paying customer. The key is consistent action that proves to yourself that you are capable of participating in wealth creation rather than merely wealth consumption. The monthly wealth review involves assessing not just your financial numbers, but your financial identity. Are you thinking like someone who builds wealth or someone who merely manages expenses? Are you making decisions based on scarcity or abundance? Are you focusing on creating value or protecting what you already have? This identity assessment often reveals patterns that are more important than specific investment returns or business profits. The transformation of identity is the foundation of all lasting change. When you act as if fear cannot touch you consistently over time, you gradually become someone for whom fearless action is natural rather than forced. You develop what researchers call embodied confidence, a deep sense of your own capability that does not depend on external validation or perfect conditions. You trust your ability to handle whatever challenges arise from taking risks and pursuing ambitious goals. The great military strategist Winston Churchill demonstrated this embodied confidence during Britain's darkest hours in World War II. When Nazi Germany controlled most of Europe and invasion seemed imminent, Churchill acted as if victory was inevitable, rather than defeat probable. His famous speeches were not mere rhetoric, but expressions of his absolute conviction that free nations would ultimately prevail over totalitarian regimes. Churchill understood that leadership in crisis requires projecting confidence even when the situation appears hopeless. His willingness to act as if Britain could stand alone against the Nazi war machine actually helped create the conditions that made survival and eventual victory possible. His fearless rhetoric inspired not just his own people but allies around the world to continue fighting when surrender would have been the easier choice. The personal application involves learning to project confidence even when you feel uncertain, to act from your vision rather than your current limitations. This does not mean being dishonest about challenges or ignoring real obstacles. It means choosing to emphasize possibilities rather than problems, solutions rather than setbacks, progress rather than perfections. The daily confidence-building practice involves what psychologists call power posing. Research shows that adopting confident physical postures for even 2 minutes can measurably change your hormone levels, increasing testosterone and decreasing cortisol in ways that enhance actual performance. Before important meetings, presentations, or difficult conversations, spend 2 minutes standing tall, shoulders back, chin up, arms either on your hips or raised above your head. This simple practice primes your nervous system for bold action. You can also practice confident vocal patterns. Speak more slowly and deliberately. Lower your vocal pitch slightly. Pause before speaking rather than rushing to fill silence. These subtle changes in how you use your voice both reflect and create internal confidence. Other people unconsciously respond to these vocal cues and are more likely to trust your judgment and follow your leadership. The ancient Greek philosopher Socrates understood that courage is ultimately about living in alignment with your deepest values rather than your immediate fears. When the Athenian authorities offered him the chance to escape execution by renouncing his teachings, Socrates chose to drink the hemlock rather than compromise his principles. He acted as if integrity was more important than survival, that some things are worth dying for, that a life without honor is not worth living. Socrates demonstrated that the highest form of fearlessness is moral courage, the willingness to do what is right, regardless of personal consequences. This form of courage creates a foundation of self-respect that makes all other forms of courage possible. When you know that you will not betray your own values for external rewards or to avoid external punishments, you develop an unshakable core that cannot be intimidated by any circumstance. The practical application involves identifying your core values and making decisions based on those values, rather than immediate convenience or social pressure. This might mean having difficult conversations to address unethical behavior. It might mean leaving relationships or situations that require you to compromise your integrity. It might mean standing up for principles even when doing so is professionally or socially costly. The weekly integrity practice involves reviewing your recent decisions and actions to assess how well they aligned with your stated values. Did you speak truthfully, even when the truth was uncomfortable? Did you keep your commitments, even when circumstances made them inconvenient? Did you treat others with respect, even when they treated you poorly? This regular self-assessment helps you identify areas where fear or convenience has caused you to act below your own standards. The monthly values clarification involves explicitly defining what you stand for and what you will not tolerate. Many people have never clearly articulated their core principles, which makes it difficult to act consistently under pressure. When you have clearly defined values, decision-making becomes simpler. You ask not what is easy or profitable or popular, but what is right, according to your deepest convictions. The great Renaissance artist and scientist Leonardo da Vinci approached his work with the fearless curiosity that characterizes all genuine learning. When he wanted to understand human anatomy, he did not let social taboos against dissecting corpses prevent him from conducting his own research. When he wanted to design flying machines, he did not let the widespread belief that human flight was impossible stop him from studying bird flight and engineering potential solutions. Leonardo acted as if learning and discovery were more important than social approval or conventional limitations. His willingness to pursue knowledge regardless of external constraints led to breakthrough insights in art, science, engineering, and philosophy that were centuries ahead of his time. His fearless approach to learning created innovations that continue to influence human progress 500 years later. This same fearless approach to learning can transform your relationship with your own potential. Instead of limiting yourself to subjects where you already feel competent, you can act as if you are capable of mastering anything that genuinely interests you. You can approach new challenges with curiosity rather than anxiety, viewing mistakes as essential parts of the learning process rather than evidence of inadequacy. The daily learning practice involves deliberately engaging with material that challenges your current understanding. This might mean reading books that present viewpoints different from your own. It might mean taking online courses in subjects outside your current expertise. It might mean seeking mentorship from people who have achieved what you want to achieve. The goal is continuous intellectual growth that expands your capacity to create value and solve problems. The weekly skill development practice involves dedicating focused time to developing one specific capability that could enhance your career prospects or personal effectiveness. This might be learning a new language, developing technical skills, improving your communication abilities, or building your financial literacy. The key is consistent practice that gradually transforms amateur interest into professional competence. The great military leader, Alexander the Great, understood that extraordinary achievements require extraordinary commitment. When his advisors urged him to consolidate his gains rather than continuing his eastward expansion, Alexander acted as if his destiny required him to push beyond the known world. His willingness to attempt what had never been attempted, to lead his armies into territories no Greek had ever seen, created an empire that fundamentally changed the course of human history. Alexander did not achieve these results through reckless abandon, but through strategic boldness, combined with meticulous preparation. He studied the cultures and military tactics of his enemies. He adapted his strategies to local conditions. He inspired fierce loyalty in his troops through his willingness to share their hardships and dangers. His fearless leadership was grounded in competence, not mere bravado. The application to your personal and professional life involves learning to distinguish between strategic risks worth taking and unnecessary dangers worth avoiding. Strategic risks have favorable risk-reward ratios and align with your long-term objectives. Unnecessary dangers offer little potential upside and could jeopardize progress you have already made. Acting as if fear cannot touch you does not mean being reckless, it means being rationally bold. The decision-making framework involves asking 3 key questions before taking any significant risk. First, what is the worst-case scenario if this decision goes badly? And can I handle that outcome? Second, what is the best-case scenario if this decision goes well, and is that outcome worth pursuing? Third, what will I regret more in 10 years, taking this risk or avoiding it? These questions help you make decisions based on strategic thinking rather than emotional impulses. The monthly risk assessment involves reviewing the risks you have taken and avoided over the past 30 days. Are you taking enough intelligent risks to create the growth and opportunities you want? Are you avoiding necessary risks because of fear or uncertainty? Are you taking unnecessary risks that could jeopardize your long-term objectives? This assessment helps you calibrate your risk-taking to support your goals rather than hinder them. The compound effect of consistently making strategic risks creates what researchers call anti-fragility, the ability to actually benefit from volatility and uncertainty rather than merely surviving them. When you regularly act as if fear cannot touch you, you develop systems, skills, and relationships that become stronger under stress rather than weaker. You position yourself to thrive in changing environments rather than merely adapt to them. The great industrialist Henry Ford demonstrated this anti-fragile approach when he revolutionized manufacturing with the assembly line production system. Ford did not wait for perfect conditions or guaranteed outcomes before implementing his vision. He acted as if his ideas about mass production and worker efficiency would succeed, then systematically worked out the problems as they arose. His willingness to act boldly on incomplete information created innovations that transformed not just his company, but entire industries around the world. Ford understood that breakthrough innovations require acting before you have all the answers, that waiting for certainty often means waiting forever. His fearless experimentation with new production methods, new labor policies, and new business models created the template for modern industrial capitalism. His ability to act as if his vision was inevitable helped make it so. The practical application involves what entrepreneurs call rapid prototyping. The practice of testing ideas quickly and cheaply, rather than planning extensively before taking action. Instead of spending months researching and planning a new project, you create a basic version and get feedback from real users. Instead of waiting until you have perfect knowledge before making an investment, you start with small positions and increase them as you gain experience and confidence. This approach works because it generates real-world data much faster than theoretical analysis. You discover what works and what does not through direct experience rather than speculation. You build confidence through small wins that prepare you for larger challenges. You develop the ability to adapt and improve based on actual results rather than imaginary obstacles. The daily experimentation practice involves trying one small thing that moves you toward your goals, but feels slightly uncomfortable or uncertain. This might mean making one cold call to a potential client. It might mean posting one piece of content that expresses your authentic viewpoint. It might mean having one difficult conversation you have been avoiding. The key is consistent, small actions that gradually expand your comfort zone and prove to yourself that you can handle uncertainty. The weekly boldness challenge involves taking one action that requires you to act as if fear cannot touch you. This should be something meaningful enough to create real results, but not so risky that failure would jeopardize your fundamental security. The goal is to systematically prove to yourself that you can do difficult things, that your courage is stronger than your fears, that you are capable of far more than your comfort zone suggests. As we approach the end of this transformative journey together, I want to emphasize that the principles we have explored are not mere concepts to be understood intellectually, but practices to be embodied daily. The ability to act as if fear cannot touch you is not a talent you either possess or lack, but a skill you can develop through consistent practice and gradual expansion of your courage. The great Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius understood that philosophy is not abstract theory but practical wisdom for living well. In his personal journal, he wrote reminders to himself about acting from strength rather than weakness, about making decisions based on virtue rather than convenience, about focusing on what he could control rather than worrying about what he could not influence. His daily practice of philosophical reflection created the mental discipline that enabled him to lead the Roman Empire with wisdom and integrity during some of its most challenging periods. Marcus Aurelius acted as if his character was more important than his circumstances, that his response to events mattered more than the events themselves. This inner focus on personal development created the external strength that made him one of history's most respected leaders. His willingness to act from principle rather than fear created a legacy of wisdom that continues to influence people seeking to live with courage and purpose. The final integration of these principles involves creating what I call your personal courage operating system. This is a set of daily practices, weekly reviews, and monthly assessments that systematically develop your ability to act fearlessly in pursuit of your most important objectives. It includes specific routines for managing your physical state, your mental focus, and your emotional responses to challenging situations. Your morning routine should include elements that prime your nervous system for bold action throughout the day. This might include physical exercise that builds energy and confidence. It might include meditation or journaling that clarifies your priorities and strengthens your resolve. It might include visualization that mentally rehearses successful outcomes for challenging situations you will face. Your evening routine should include reflection on how well you acted in alignment with your values and vision rather than your fears and limitations. This is not self-criticism but honest self-assessment designed to accelerate learning and growth. You identify moments when you acted courageously and moments when fear influenced your decisions. You plan specific actions for the next day that will continue expanding your comfort zone. Your weekly review involves assessing your progress toward important goals and identifying the next level of challenges that will continue your growth. You celebrate the courageous actions you have taken and recommit to the practices that support fearless living. You adjust your strategies based on what you have learned through experience and feedback. Your monthly assessment involves evaluating whether your actions are creating the results and the identity transformation you desire. Are you becoming more confident and capable? Are you taking on bigger challenges and achieving better outcomes? Are you inspiring others through your example of fearless living? This longer-term perspective helps you stay committed to practices that create lasting change rather than seeking quick fixes that provide temporary relief. Before we conclude, I want to extend one final invitation to join our community of growth-oriented individuals who are committed to living beyond the limitations of fear. If you have found value in this exploration of how to act as if fear cannot touch you, please subscribe to Mental Forge Academy and become part of our mission to help people unleash their full potential. When you subscribe, you are not just accessing content. You are joining a movement of people who refuse to settle for mediocrity, who are committed to continuous growth, and who understand that their personal transformation contributes to positive change in the world. The ultimate insight of acting as if fear cannot touch you is that courage is not the opposite of fear, but the transcendence of it. You do not need to eliminate fear to act fearlessly. You need to develop the ability to feel fear and choose your actions based on your values rather than your emotions. You need to understand that your feelings are temporary experiences that do not define your capabilities or determine your choices. When you master this ability, you discover that most of what you have been afraid of exists only in your imagination. The conversations you have been avoiding are rarely as difficult as you anticipated. The risks you have been postponing are rarely as dangerous as you feared. The challenges you have been dreading are rarely as overwhelming as they appeared from a distance. More importantly, you discover that the life you have been wanting to live has been available all along, waiting for you to act as if you deserve it. The relationships, opportunities, achievements, and contributions you desire become accessible when you stop waiting for permission and start acting from your deepest convictions about what is possible for your life. This is not about becoming a different person, but about becoming more fully yourself. Fear causes you to contract, to play small, to hide your gifts, and suppress your dreams. Courage allows you to expand, to express your authentic nature, to share your unique contributions with the world. When you act as if fear cannot touch you, you are not pretending to be someone you are not. You are finally allowing yourself to be who you truly are. The world needs your courage. It needs your willingness to take risks, to challenge conventions, to create solutions, to build businesses, to serve others, to stand for principles, to pursue excellence. When you act as if fear cannot touch you, you become part of the solution to humanity's greatest challenges. You contribute to the ongoing expansion of what is possible for human life and human achievement. Your courage creates permission for others to be courageous. Your boldness inspires others to be bold. Your refusal to settle for less than your potential encourages others to pursue their own greatness. The ripple effects of your fearless living extend far beyond your personal benefits to influence your family, your community, and future generations who will inherit the world you help create. The time for preparation is over. The time for action is now. You have learned the principles. You understand the practices. You know what needs to be done. The only question remaining is whether you will act on what you know, or continue waiting for conditions that will never be perfect, for confidence that only comes from taking action, for permission that no one else can give you. Choose to act as if fear cannot touch you. Choose to live from faith rather than fear. Choose to pursue your vision rather than protect your comfort. Choose to become the person you are meant to be, rather than remaining the person you have been. Choose courage over comfort, growth over safety, contribution over consumption. The forge of transformation awaits your commitment. The fire of challenge is ready to strengthen your resolve. The hammer of experience is prepared to shape your character. But you must choose to enter the forge. You must choose to embrace the heat. You must choose to be transformed by the process. Your moment of choice is here. Your opportunity for transformation is now. Your invitation to greatness is extended. Act as if fear cannot touch you, and discover the extraordinary life that has been waiting for your courage to claim it. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The transformation of a lifetime begins with a single choice. The legacy of courage begins with a single act of faith in your own potential. Make that choice. Take that step. Act with faith. Live as if fear cannot touch you. Your future self is counting on the decision you make right now. Make it a decision you will be proud to remember for the rest of your life. The world is waiting for what only you can give. Stop waiting for the world to give you permission to be great. Act as if fear cannot touch you, and become unstoppable. These steps requires acting as if fear cannot touch you. Each requires moving beyond the emotional comfort zone that keeps most people financially mediocre. Each requires faith in your ability to learn, adapt, and create value in an uncertain world. The Renaissance master Leonardo da Vinci embodied this fearless approach to learning and creation. When he decided to study human anatomy, he did not let his lack of formal medical training stop him. He obtained cadavers and began dissecting them himself, making detailed drawings that advanced medical knowledge by centuries. When he wanted to paint the Last Supper, he did not let the technical challenges of working with oil on wet plaster deter him. He invented new techniques as he worked. When he designed flying machines, he did not let the fact that human flight was considered impossible prevent him from engineering solutions that would not be successfully implemented for another 500 years. Leonardo acted as if his curiosity and creativity were more important than social conventions or traditional limitations. He understood that genius is not about having supernatural abilities, but about having the courage to pursue your interests and develop your talents, regardless of external validation or approval. He acted as if learning and creating were their own rewards, independent of whether others understood or appreciated his work. This same fearless curiosity can transform your relationship with your own potential. Instead of limiting yourself to skills and interests that you already know you are good at, you can act as if you are capable of mastering anything that genuinely interests you. You can approach new challenges with the assumption that competence is the natural result of focused practice rather than innate talent. You can view mistakes and setbacks as essential parts of the learning process rather than evidence of your limitations. The habit of acting fearlessly compounds over time through what Darren Hardy calls the compound effect. Small acts of courage, repeated consistently, create dramatic transformations in your capabilities, opportunities, and results. The person who makes one courageous phone call might get one new opportunity. The person who makes 100 courageous phone calls will inevitably create multiple opportunities. The person who makes 1,000 courageous phone calls will have transformed themselves into someone who naturally attracts opportunities. This compound effect applies to every area of life. The person who acts as if fear cannot touch them in social situations gradually becomes genuinely confident and charismatic. The person who acts fearlessly in creative pursuits gradually develops genuine expertise and original voice. The person who acts fearlessly in business gradually builds genuine wealth and influence. The external transformations are real, but they are secondary to the internal transformation of becoming someone who does not need external conditions to be perfect before taking action. The ancient Spartan king Leonidas demonstrated this principle at the Battle of Thermopylae. When the vast Persian army under Xerxes demanded that the Spartans surrender their weapons, Leonidas responded with two words that have echoed through history: "Molon labe," meaning come and take them. He was not deluded about the military odds. He understood that his small force of 300 Spartans was facing an army of hundreds of thousands. But he also understood that some things are more important than survival, that there are principles worth dying for, that courage in the face of overwhelming odds can inspire future generations for thousands of years. Leonidas acted as if his commitment to his principles was more important than his fear of death. This was not reckless bravado, but rather the ultimate expression of values-based decision-making. He chose to act from his deepest convictions rather than his immediate circumstances. The result was not just a heroic last stand, but a strategic victory that delayed the Persian advance long enough for the Greek city-states to organize their defense and ultimately preserve Western civilization. You may never face such dramatic circumstances, but you face the same essential choice every day. You can make decisions based on your fears or your values. You can act from scarcity or abundance. You can choose expansion or contraction. When you consistently choose to act as if fear cannot touch you, you are choosing to live from your highest values rather than your lowest impulses. The practical discipline begins with what I call the daily fear audit. Each evening, review your day and honestly assess the moments when fear influenced your decisions. Did you avoid making that phone call because you were afraid of rejection? Did you hold back in the meeting because you were afraid of looking foolish? Did you postpone starting that project because you were afraid it would not be perfect? Simply noticing these patterns without judgment is the first step toward changing them. Then, for each situation where fear influenced your behavior, imagine how you would have acted if fear could not touch you. What would you have said? What action would you have taken? What opportunity might you have created? This mental rehearsal primes your nervous system to respond differently in similar situations. You are programming yourself to default to courage rather than caution. The weekly practice involves deliberately seeking out situations that activate your fear response. This might mean signing up for public speaking opportunities, starting conversations with strangers, pitching ideas to potential clients, or investing in assets that involve calculated risks. The goal is not to be reckless, but to systematically expand your comfort zone. You are training yourself to feel the fear and act anyway. Each time you do this, you prove to yourself that you can handle uncertainty, rejection, and failure. You discover that the anticipation of difficult experiences is almost always worse than the experiences themselves. You build what researchers call distress tolerance, the ability to remain functional and focused even when facing uncomfortable emotions or challenging circumstances. The monthly review involves assessing the cumulative impact of your fearless actions. What new opportunities have opened up? What skills have you developed? What relationships have you built? What progress have you made toward your most important goals? This review reinforces the connection between acting courageously and creating the life you want. It provides the motivation to continue pushing beyond your comfort zone, even when the immediate rewards are not obvious. I want to pause here and acknowledge something important about this community we are building together. The insights and strategies we explore here are not meant to be consumed passively, but practiced actively. If you have found value in what we have covered so far, please take a moment to subscribe and ring that notification bell. This simple action signals to yourself that you are serious about transformation, that you are committed to the ongoing process of becoming the person you are meant to be. It also helps us continue creating content that serves your growth and reaches others who are ready for this message. The spiritual traditions have long understood that acting from faith rather than fear aligns us with the creative forces of the universe. In the Christian tradition, faith is defined as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. This is not blind belief, but rather the willingness to act based on your deepest convictions, rather than your immediate circumstances. It is the recognition that your external world is largely a reflection of your internal world, that changing your results requires changing your identity and behavior. The Hindu concept of dharma teaches that each person has a unique purpose or calling that transcends personal comfort and security. Living in alignment with your dharma often requires acting in ways that feel risky or uncertain from the perspective of the ego, but perfectly aligned from the perspective of the soul. When you act as if fear cannot touch you, you are more likely to take the actions that align with your deeper purpose, rather than your surface-level desires for comfort and approval. The Buddhist understanding of non-attachment provides another angle on this practice. When you are attached to specific outcomes, you inevitably experience fear about not getting what you want or losing what you already have. But when you can act wholeheartedly while remaining unattached to results, you are free to take bold actions based on your values rather than your anxieties. You can pursue your goals with total commitment while maintaining the equanimity to handle whatever outcomes arise. The great spiritual teacher, Mahatma Gandhi, embodied this principle throughout his campaign for Indian independence. When he decided to march to the sea to make salt in defiance of British law, he was acting as if fear could not touch him. He knew that he might be arrested, beaten, or killed. He knew that his actions might fail to achieve their immediate objective. But he also knew that acting from his deepest convictions was more important than avoiding potential consequences. Gandhi understood that moral courage is the foundation of all other forms of courage. When you are willing to act in alignment with your values regardless of external pressures, you develop the internal strength to act boldly in every other area of life. You prove to yourself that you can handle whatever challenges arise from standing up for what you believe. You discover that integrity is not just a moral virtue but a practical advantage in a world where most people compromise their values for temporary convenience. The neuroscience behind this transformation involves what researchers call cognitive reframing. When you consistently interpret challenging situations as opportunities
your
for
mind
growth
has been
rather
forged
than
a little
threats to your
stronger today.
security,
But the
you
real
literally
test isn't
rewire
what
the
you
neural
learn,
pathways
it's
in
what
your
you
brain.
do with it.
The same
Take
situation
action,
that once
dominate your
triggered fear
day,
and avoidance
and remember, we're
begins
not
to
just
trigger
building better
excitement
thoughts,
and
we're
approach
forging
behavior.
unstoppable
You
lives.
train yourself to
The
see
forge doesn't
obstacles
stop,
as
and
strengthening
neither do you.
exercises rather than
If this
roadblocks.
episode hit you where it
This
counts,
reframing process is
subscribe to
enhanced
Mental
by
Forge Academy
visualization and
and
mental
join the
rehearsal.
brotherhood of champions
Professional
who
athletes
refuse
have
to
long
settle for
understood
ordinary.
that mental practice
Go
can be almost
transform,
as effective
strike
as
while the
physical
mind is
practice in
hot.
developing skills and confidence. When you regularly visualize yourself acting fearlessly in challenging situations, you are creating neural pathways that make fearless action more automatic when those situations arise in reality. The specific visualization technique involves imagining yourself in a situation that typically triggers fear, then seeing yourself responding with complete confidence and composure. You visualize not just the external actions you would take, but also the internal state you would maintain. You see yourself breathing calmly, thinking clearly, and moving decisively. You imagine the positive outcomes that flow from your courageous actions. This mental rehearsal primes your nervous system to respond courageously when facing similar situations in real life. The great industrialist Andrew Carnegie understood that wealth building requires acting as if financial abundance is your natural state, rather than an impossible dream. Carnegie emigrated to America as a poor Scottish boy, but he acted as if poverty was a temporary condition, rather than his permanent destiny. He invested in his education, developed valuable skills, and took calculated risks that gradually transformed him into one of the wealthiest men of his era. Carnegie's biography reveals a consistent pattern of acting beyond his apparent circumstances. When he was still a telegraph operator earning a modest wage, he began investing in railroad stocks as if he already belonged in the world of high finance. When he decided to enter the steel business, he acted as if he could compete with established industrialists, despite having no direct experience in manufacturing. His willingness to act as if success was inevitable, combined with intelligent effort and continuous learning, created the reality he had first imagined. This same principle applies to building wealth in our current economy. Instead of acting from the scarcity mindset that keeps most people financially mediocre, you can act from the abundance mindset that attracts and creates wealth. This means making financial decisions based on long-term value creation rather than short-term security. It means investing in appreciating assets rather than depreciating liabilities. It means developing skills that create value for others rather than simply trading time for money. The practical application involves what I call wealth rehearsal behaviors. Even if your current financial situation is limited, you can begin acting like someone who understands and manages money well. You can track every expense, create and follow a budget, automate your savings, and educate yourself about investing. These behaviors cost nothing to implement but gradually transform your relationship with money from fear and scarcity to confidence and abundance. You can also begin acting like someone who creates value rather than merely consuming it. This might mean starting a side business, developing a marketable skill, or finding ways to solve problems for others. The goal is not immediate financial returns, but rather the identity transformation that comes from seeing yourself as someone who creates wealth, rather than someone who merely earns wages. The great inventor and entrepreneur Thomas Edison faced this challenge when developing the first commercially viable electric light system. The technical challenges were enormous, but the financial and social challenges were even greater. Edison had to convince investors to fund an unproven technology, utilities to adopt an entirely new infrastructure, and consumers to abandon gas lamps for an unfamiliar alternative. At every step, he acted as if success was inevitable rather than uncertain. Edison understood that innovation requires acting as if solutions exist before they are apparent. He established the first industrial research laboratory and hired teams of skilled assistants to work on multiple projects simultaneously. He patented over 1,000 inventions and created entire industries that employed millions of people. His ability to act fearlessly in the face of technical and financial uncertainty literally illuminated the modern world. The key insight from Edison's approach is that breakthrough results require breakthrough thinking and breakthrough action. Incremental improvements come from acting within your comfort zone. Transformational results come from acting as if your current limitations are temporary constraints rather than permanent boundaries. They come from expanding your vision of what is possible and then acting consistently with that expanded vision. The daily practice of expanding your vision involves what researchers call mental contrasting. You begin by clearly imagining your ideal outcomes in vivid detail. What would your life look like if you achieved your most important goals? How would you feel? What would you do? Who would you become? This visualization activates the motivational centers in your brain and creates emotional pull toward your desired future. Then, you honestly assess the obstacles and challenges you currently face. What skills do you need to develop? What fears do you need to overcome? What habits do you need to change? This realistic assessment prevents the visualization from becoming mere fantasy and helps you identify specific actions you need to take. Finally, you create implementation intentions that bridge the gap between your current reality and your desired future. If you encounter a specific obstacle, then you will take a specific action. If you feel a particular fear, then you will implement a particular courage practice. These if-then plans make your response to challenges automatic, rather than something you have to decide in the moment when your willpower might be compromised. The great Roman general Julius Caesar demonstrated this principle when he crossed the Rubicon River with his legions, knowing that this action would likely lead to civil war. Caesar could have chosen to remain in Gaul, enjoying the wealth and status he had already achieved. He could have retired to a comfortable life of luxury and leisure. Instead, he acted as if his destiny required him to reshape the Roman world, regardless of the personal risks involved. Caesar understood that great achievements require great risks, that playing it safe ultimately leads to regret and mediocrity. His decision to cross the Rubicon, literally and figuratively, created the opportunity to become the most powerful man in the known world. His willingness to act as if fear could not touch him transformed not just his own life but the entire course of Western civilization. You may not face decisions of such historical magnitude, but you face the same essential choice between safety and significance, between comfort and contribution, between settling and striving. Every day presents opportunities to cross your own Rubicon, to take actions that align with your highest vision rather than your immediate fears. The compound effect of consistently making these bold choices creates what researchers call upward spirals of development. Each courageous action builds confidence. Increased confidence leads to bolder actions. Bolder actions create better results. Better results reinforce the belief that you are capable of achieving your goals. This positive feedback loop gradually transforms your entire relationship with challenge and uncertainty. The weekly practice involves identifying one significant action you have been avoiding because of fear, uncertainty, or the possibility of failure. Then you commit to taking that action within the next 7 days, regardless of how you feel about it. You act as if the outcome is already assured by your commitment to the process. You focus on what you can control, your effort and attitude, rather than what you cannot control, the specific results that emerge. This practice gradually expands your definition of what is possible for your life. Actions that once seemed impossible become merely difficult. Actions that once seemed difficult become routine. Your comfort zone expands to include challenges that would have paralyzed you in the past. You develop what Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset, the belief that your abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work, rather than being fixed traits determined by genetics or early experience. The philosophical foundation of acting fearlessly lies in understanding the nature of time and possibility. Fear is always about the future, about things that might happen, about outcomes that are ultimately unknowable. When you act as if fear cannot touch you, You are choosing to live in the present moment, where you have actual power and influence. You are recognizing that the future is created by the actions you take now, not by the worries you entertain about what might go wrong. The Stoic philosophers understood this principle deeply. Marcus Aurelius taught that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, that most of our fears are about events that never actually occur. Epictetus taught that we cannot control external events, but we can always control our responses to them. Seneca taught that courage is not the absence of fear but the mastery of it, the ability to act rationally despite emotional turbulence. These ancient insights align perfectly with modern research in cognitive behavioral therapy and positive psychology. When you learn to observe your fearful thoughts without being controlled by them, you develop what psychologists call metacognitive awareness. You realize that thoughts are not facts, that emotions are temporary experiences, that you have the power to choose your responses regardless of your immediate internal state. The practical application involves what I call the observer practice. Several times throughout each day, pause and notice what you are thinking and feeling without trying to change anything. Simply observe your mental and emotional state with curiosity rather than judgment. Are you feeling anxious about an upcoming challenge? Are you worried about someone's opinion? Are you avoiding a difficult conversation? This observation creates space between you and your automatic reactions. In that space lies your power to choose responses that align with your values rather than your fears. You can feel anxious and still make the phone call. You can feel uncertain and still take the risk. You can feel afraid and still act courageously. The feeling does not determine the action. The action is determined by your commitment to becoming the person you are meant to be. The great explorer and conqueror Alexander the Great embodied this principle throughout his unprecedented campaign to create a world-spanning empire. When his advisors counseled caution, when his soldiers begged to return home, when faced with seemingly impossible odds, Alexander acted as if victory was inevitable. He did not ignore the dangers or minimize the challenges. He simply refused to let those factors determine his strategic choices. Alexander understood that leadership requires acting from vision rather than circumstance, from possibility rather than probability. His willingness to push beyond the known world, to attempt what had never been attempted, created an empire that stretched from Greece to India. His fearless vision inspired his followers to achieve what they never would have thought possible if left to their own limited imagination. This same leadership principle applies whether you are leading others or simply leading your own life. When you act as if fear cannot touch you, you inspire confidence in those around you. People are naturally drawn to those who move through the world with purpose and conviction. Your courage gives others permission to be courageous. Your boldness creates space for their boldness. The ripple effects extend far beyond your immediate circle. When you consistently act from courage rather than fear, you create value that outlasts your lifetime. The businesses you start, the relationships you build, the contributions you make, the example you set, all become part of a legacy that influences future generations. You become a link in the chain of human progress, part of the continuous effort to expand the boundaries of what is possible. At this point in our journey together, I want to invite you once more to become an active part of this community of growth-oriented individuals. If these ideas are resonating with you, if you can feel them activating something powerful within you, please take a moment to subscribe to Mental Forge Academy. When you subscribe, you are not just accessing content, you are joining a movement of people who refuse to settle for less than their full potential. You are committing to the ongoing process of becoming the person you are meant to be. This is your invitation to transform not just your own life, but to become part of the positive change our world desperately needs. The wealthy understand intuitively that financial success requires acting as if abundance is your natural state, rather than scarcity your permanent condition. They make investment decisions based on long-term value creation rather than short-term security. They view market volatility as opportunity rather than threat. They understand that wealth is not just about accumulating money, but about developing the mindset, skills, and habits that attract and multiply resources. The practical application begins with shifting your relationship with money from emotional to strategic. Instead of making financial decisions based on fear, greed, or social pressure. You learn to make decisions based on mathematical principles and long-term value creation. You automate your savings so that wealth building happens regardless of your immediate feelings about spending. You educate yourself about investing so that you can make informed decisions rather than being paralyzed by complexity or uncertainty. You also begin acting like someone who creates value rather than merely consuming it. This might mean developing skills that solve problems for others, starting a business that serves a genuine market need, or finding ways to make existing processes more efficient and effective. The goal is to shift your identity from someone who trades time for money to someone who creates systems and assets that generate income independently of your direct effort. The great financier J.P. Morgan demonstrated this principle when he single-handedly prevented the Panic of 1907 from destroying the American economy. When banks were failing and financial markets were collapsing, Morgan acted as if stability could be restored through decisive leadership and strategic action. He organized meetings of the most powerful financiers in the country, committed his own resources to shore up failing institutions, and created confidence through his willingness to act boldly when others were paralyzed by uncertainty. Morgan understood that financial markets are ultimately driven by psychology as much as mathematics. When confidence collapses, even fundamentally sound institutions can fail. When confidence is restored through decisive action, markets can recover rapidly. His willingness to act as if the crisis could be resolved actually helped resolve it. His fearless leadership during a time of panic earned him a place as one of the most influential figures in American financial history. The lesson for your personal financial life is that wealth building requires acting from confidence rather than fear, from abundance rather than scarcity. This means making investment decisions based on long-term fundamentals rather than short-term emotions. It means continuing to invest during market downturns when assets are on sale rather than panic selling when prices are falling. It means building multiple streams of income so that you are not dependent on any single source of money. The daily practice involves what I call financial fearlessness behaviors. Instead of checking your investment accounts obsessively when markets are volatile, you stick to your predetermined investment schedule. Instead of keeping excessive amounts of money in low-yield savings accounts because you are afraid of market risk, you systematically invest in diversified portfolios that have historically grown wealth over time. Instead of avoiding debt entirely, you learn to distinguish between good debt that helps you acquire appreciating assets and bad debt that finances consumption. Champions, your mind has been forged a little stronger today, but the real test isn't what you learned, it's what you do with it. Take action, dominate your day, and remember, we're not just building better thoughts, we're forging unstoppable lives. The forge doesn't stop, and neither do you. If this episode hit you where it counts, subscribe to Mental Forge Academy and join the Brotherhood of Champions who refuse to settle for ordinary. Go transform, strike while the mind is hot.